All right, we've been joined in the studio by a guy who's come to represent, I guess, the argument against, just staying pat on global warming. Dr. David Suzuki is the renowned scientist and environmentalist in the midst of a cross-country tour that will see him visit 40 cities, asking the question of the assembled, if you were the Prime Minister, what would you do for the environment? And he has come into the studio here in Toronto. It's good to have you on board.
Good to be here.
So, I guess we've got to assume that if you were Prime Minister, is signing the Kyoto Accord, for example, step one?
The Kyoto Accord's been signed. When Jean Chrétien ratified Kyoto in 2002, he didn't ratify that as a Liberal. He ratified that as the Prime Minister of Canada. He committed Canada to that. And when Mr. Putin ratified, then in February 2005, it became international law. I don't understand why Parliament now has to go through this whole business they've been doing. We're committed to it. We're signed to it. And it is international law. The only question is, are we going to become international outlaws or not? And that's what the current government seems to want to do. I think Canadians would be outraged if they realized that we're bound to it as a part of an international citizens group.
All right, well, the failure to meet the obligations, then, how are those penalized? If there's no...
That's the whole problem with the Kyoto Protocol. There are really no teeth to it. I mean, there may be some kind of trade sanctions, but really it's a law that we agree once a certain percentage of the world has signed on to it, it becomes international law. It's really just the force of a moral obligation, I guess.
All right, when you say when the world signs on to it, but too much of the world has not signed on to it.
That was deliberate. That was deliberate. When the Kyoto discussions began, and in 1997 when it was formed, everybody in the industrialized world agreed, we created the problem. It was our emissions that had filled up the atmosphere, and we were still the major contributors to it. So, in all fairness, it was up to us who had created the problem in the industrialized world, and we were the rich countries, to bring our emissions down. And then by 2010, we would bring the rest of the world into the discussion and have a final agreement in 2012 for everybody else. If we can't do it, why should China or India, Indonesia or Brazil pay any attention to this? We created the problem, and if we're not willing to start reducing emissions, why should they?
Well, because they're going to exacerbate the problem. Looking forward, as we invariably do with the climate models, they're going to be responsible, some people say, for 50% of the emissions.
Absolutely.
And they've got to be the ones to be there as much in a partnership with
if we who have created the problem in the first place aren't willing to do anything, why the hell shouldn't they go on and do what we've done?
All right,
we've got a moral obligation to show that we recognize the threat, we have created it, and we're going to bring our emissions down.
But, David, there's a whole school of thought out there, I don't need to tell you this, that quibbles with the science. The last time we spoke on the phone...
I'm amazed that you're even bringing that up now. For God's sake, the IPCC report came out on February 2nd. Don't even get onto that. That's all covered. The naysayers...
You think that's the book closed on this? The jury's
in? Absolutely. The challenge now is to get on with it.
A lot of scientists feel they're intimidated from speaking out.
That's a lot of baloney. 2,500 scientists signed the IPCC report on February 2nd. What you've got is a tiny handful of naysayers, and if you go to the website Desmog Blog, they've traced all of these guys to see where their money's coming from. And guess what? Guys like Fred Singer, who's one of the big naysayers, he's a doctor, he's a scientist. He used to be the shill for the tobacco industry, and now he's shilling for the fossil fuel industry.
You know what? They'll turn around and they'll say,
even give them
where's
any
Suzuki
time.
Getting his money? What's his agenda? That's what they counter with.
Exactly. Ask me where I'm getting my money.
Where are you getting
I'm not getting any money from my foundation. I am getting the foundation gets its money from ordinary people. We don't take government money. Corporations have not been interested in funding us. We get it from ordinary Canadians across the country, 40,000 of them, and we get some foundations in both Canada and the United States. So that's my agenda. We speak on behalf of the people that fund us.
The word agenda comes up often in this because, of course, you got the opposing points of view, schools of thought, whatever. And a lot of people think this is driven more by politics than it is by science.
It's all politics. It's all politics. But the science is in. And it's people like us right here now that are discussing the naysayers who perpetuate the notion that there's a controversy. Look, if you're going to talk on your show about evolution, do you feel that you've got to bring in a handful of creationists in order to be balanced?
Well, I'm respectful of another point of view. That's what my point is, and I do want to arrive...
Well, if you want to take the science is in.
Except that, see, here's what it is. It's the coexistence of the practical with the ideal. And by that I mean, for example...
practical and the ideal. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is Buzz Hargrove is the practical this morning. As much as Buzz Hargrove comes from the left, and yet he stated emphatically on this program that he went to Stefan Dion, he went to Jack Layton, implored these gentlemen, don't sign this Kyoto thing. Let's not move forward with this in haste because it's not doable. It's not feasible. It'll damage our industry. We've got to... And even Canadians, let me add to this. Canadians, when they say the environment's the number one concern, it is until it comes to costing them in their wallets.
Canadians will cough up what needs to be done if they see leadership on the part of their so-called leaders. Look, talk about economics. This is what the private sector always says we can't afford to do it.
Buzz Hargrove's a union leader.
Buzz Hargrove. Forget Buzz Hargrove.
How can you forget him?
He's got a vested interest, for God's sake. I understand where he's coming from. If you're working for the tobacco industry, do you think you're going to be saying, hey, look, we got to stop smoking because you get cancer?
He's protecting jobs and livelihoods.
Exactly. And what I'm saying is, let's have a look at the economics of this whole thing. You take Sir Nicholas Stern, okay, eminent economist, World Bank senior economist, does a study, says, what'll it cost to do something about reducing our emissions so we don't keep making the problem bigger? 1% of the GDP. That's billions of dollars for Canada. Okay? And this is what everybody goes, oh my God, it'll ruin the economy. But he then did something that guys like Buzz Hargrove and all these others don't do. What is the cost if we carry on with business as usual and don't try to achieve Kyoto and beyond? And you know what? It'll absolutely destroy the economy. Dealing with the consequences of not doing anything will cost more than World War I and World War II put together. So you got two things. Here's an economist. You can absolutely trash the economy, or you're going to pay 1% of the GDP. I don't think you got a choice.
All right. Although some may quibble, I'll say in part.
Yeah, you're quibbling with it, obviously.
Well, no, I'm just saying.
But what do you say to Nicholas Stern? What do you say to the IPCC?
I'm hearing a lot of people saying that the computer models projecting into the future are pure speculation. All right. But where's the website if people did want to follow up and find out more information on your
you can go to the davidsuzuki.org. There's lots of information and a lot of information about what we as ordinary people, individuals, can do to begin to be part of the solution.
I appreciate you coming in. Dr. David Suzuki.